Well, I already know this video is going to be controversial. So this is actually my second video on this. I have a lot of thoughts on this game, so I'm dividing it into 3 parts, where the first part I mentioned the critical flaws in this game, but I really wanted a whole video where I dedicate to just talking about all the things I loved about it. I really think that this game is getting review bombed and overhated, and for the wrong reasons too. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't work in this game, but some people literally only hate this game because of Joel's death and the fact that you have to play as his killer. I think people are just blindly hating the game because of that and are purposely overlooking stuff such as the graphics, the level design, sound design, the combat, the seamless transitions between game to cutscene, and the really good emotional beats of the game. So with all that being said, let's just get into what I really loved about The Last of Us 2. I'm not calling it part 2. Title's already long enough. To start off, I'm going to be strictly talking about the gameplay first, because that's a lot easier to critique and I have pretty much zero flaws with it. So the thing I love most about this game is the combat. The combat is so much fun and it's so visceral. The stealth actually feels really realistic when you play it on hard difficulty, and the game just feels so intense. It really makes you feel like you need to nail your shots, be patient, and conserve your resources. Even on the easiest difficulty, there's still a pretty good amount of difficulty in the game. I didn't love the gameplay in the first one, but in this one, I actively looked forward to fighting people and either going full on combat or stealth. Either way, it was just a ton of fun for me. This game is really aided by the fact that there are new abilities like the jump button, going prone so enemies can't see you as easily, a dodge button, and the plentiful new craftable items that I found myself having to use quite often. The game is really violent at times, and it makes things a lot more realistic, and it kind of makes you want to not kill people, so the gameplay also adds to the theme of the story that all this violence and gratuitousness is really unnecessary and you kind of just don't want to do it at times. Like, I could deal with just not having to do this again. Also, the variety is just so good in this game. You can take people hostage or use them as a shield and shoot other enemies and then execute them. There's also a few infected archetypes that I really like, the first one being these wolf type infected where you can't actually use your own hearing senses and it really forces you to pay attention to your own surroundings. The other one being the shamblers, which are pretty much just the bloaters but slightly more difficult, and I enjoyed fighting against them too. And then there's this one mutated thing, like what the heck? The game also has some really fun level designs where you have to fight both the infected and one of the factions at the same time, which either will be really useful to you or can make the situation much worse depending on how you handle it, which makes the game so much more fun and unique because fighting the same people over and over again can get really repetitive. But I never felt that way because there's just so much variety in here. Lastly, this game has some of the best difficulty settings where you can personally adjust different stuff according to your liking, such as you can adjust the difficulty for your allies, your enemies, the stealth, and resources, which makes for a really unique experience because you can really customize it to how you want to play. There's a lot of detail that is also optional if you just want to get to the point, which I really liked, because sometimes I was just getting anxious and skipped over parts of the town just to get to the new cutscene. But this also improves replay value because you can go back and collect the artifacts or trophies later, which really makes this game really great. I also enjoyed reading some of the notes. It really makes the game feel very lived in, and there's just so much, other stories that occur that have nothing to do with Ellie, Abby, or Joel. But that'll about do it for the gameplay. I pretty much enjoyed all of it and have zero complaints. It's honestly essentially pretty much perfect. Other than the AI can be kind of stupid sometimes, and fighting zombies should get a little stale at points, but other than that I had a blast playing the game. Now let's get to that totally uncontroversial story. There definitely won't be any debate around that, am I right? So to start off, I had problems with the story, but I'm mainly here to talk about what I liked about it, and overall I feel pretty much positive about it anyway. I think the main reason people hate the game is that it just does too many ambitious and controversial things. It doesn't give the player what they want, and the game doesn't owe you anything. The game doesn't need to give you anything about Joel. Characters don't deserve a perfect character arc. It's not a fairy tale land. Joel may not get a happy ending, and that's what I really loved about that. The game's priority is telling its own story, and that's what it did. It never pandered to anything, and I don't even know why people would want something so safe and what they would expect. Like, wouldn't that be pretty boring? Anyway, I really loved Ellie's story. She's in a really conflicted state this entire game where she's grappling with the morality of her actions and how far she's willing to go to exact revenge. Sometimes it pays off, other times she's just needlessly killing people, and you get to see the aftermath of Ellie's destruction that sometimes leaves her utterly horrified. The first half of the game doesn't have a perfect pace by any means, nor the second half, but I was definitely most interested in that first half simply because, finding Abby and Ellie basically goes from clue to clue, and it's just a really intense ride that is really, really well done. I like that the game decides to go in depth with Abby and her adventures. It really nails a thematic point that understanding and perspective is everything. To her, Joel and Ellie are the villains. Looking at it, in a totally unbiased perspective, Joel is a really bad and almost evil person. I mean, we the viewers know he's not evil because we spent so much time with him, but from Abby's perspective, he doomed all of humanity, killed her father, and so many other surgeons and soldiers in that hospital that died for no good reason. It makes complete sense as to why Abby did what she did and how she did it. I also like how we get to know some of Abby's friends, and it actually kind of hurts seeing them die from her perspective, whereas I was cheering for Ellie or Tommy to kill them in their perspective. I really like how she saved Lev and Yara because she does it through guilt, but then actually learns the perspective that not all people in that cult are necessarily bad, and a lot of people in Abby's WLF faction are also quite evil. It really shows the point of understanding, and there are really no good or bad people in this world. Abby is actually probably a better person than Ellie. She lets her live twice despite everything she's done, and even refuses to fight her when she shows up the third time. Abby saves people and does several selfless acts throughout the entire game. Whether they come from the right place is a different story though. Now let's address that ending. A lot of people really hate this ending. And I get some of those critiques, but if you hated the ending simply because Ellie didn't kill Abby, then you really missed the whole point of it. But it would have been a far worse ending if all Ellie learned throughout this entire game is just to give into her hate and revenge. It would have completely contradicted its theme of understanding one another. It probably would have been much more satisfying, but it would have been such just lazy writing to do that. This game also decides to be split with a lot of flashbacks, and I loved so many of them. Joel and Ellie have 4 main flashbacks with each other. The first is completely wholesome, happy, depressing, and it reminds you of why you fell in love with this game so much. It does such a good job of making you want to just go back and be in simpler times even though you can't. The second one slowly shows their relationship declining, but there's still some nice banter between the two. It's a gradual decline, so once you get into the third flashback, it's utterly heartbreaking because their entire relationship falls apart. This leaves you feeling more sad because Joel died when he still had a broken relationship with Ellie. I contemplated for a while as to why they made Ellie, know that Joel saved her in that hospital. It didn't make a lot of sense to me until the second to last scene. Here we see a totally normal conversation between the two until Ellie brings up the hospital again. It shows again the theme of understanding. Ellie was hurt, but she gets why he did what he did. And Ellie's main anger is that Abby took away the chance of Ellie reconciling with Joel. She was finally going to give the chance of acceptance and understanding, and it's utterly heartbreaking and completely understandable as to why she acts the way she does, despite knowing what Joel did to her. Their last interaction feels so realistic because sometimes you have no idea your previous conversation with someone will be your last ever. And understanding and compassion is key because you never know when it might be too late. The acting from everyone in this game is also just so good, particularly from Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker. The plot constantly left me guessing and at times just super emotional. Sometimes it took too long to get where it wanted to go, but I really love the world and all the characters set up here. It really makes you understand Abby as a person, even if you still don't like her. It's kind of irrelevant because the whole point is just to see her perspective. There are a lot of antagonists that aren't likable and their motivations are complete evil, but at the very least, we understand them. A lot of forms of media try to tackle the theme of the endless cycle of revenge and violence, or understanding and compassion is key. But I've never seen it so in depth before. I get not liking the game if you've really given it some thought, and there's a lot of reasons not to like the game, but there's also so many reasons to love it, and it's definitely being overshadowed by the hate. Just think of all the people who work so hard to keep this game's plot a secret by filming fake scenes, fixing the trailers, and working non-stop for years just for it to get leaked and review bombed. The least the game deserves is a well thought out opinion on why you do or do not like it. Anyway, that's it for my positives. There's just so much I loved about this game, and there's still so many things that I haven't even mentioned that I loved. I still have a few more negatives and positives that I couldn't really mention, but that'll be in my third review. I just really wanted to go more in depth in these separate videos so my overall review will be more concise. I'll probably post that in a couple days, but what did you guys think of The Last of Us 2? Did you absolutely hate it? Think it was a masterpiece? Kinda in the middle? Whatever it is, I'd love to know your opinions down in the comments below. With all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Remember to leave a like and even consider subscribing. Peace.